Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmaracharya Pariyantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. Good. Be seated, please. Om Parameshvara. Mm-hmm. I'll look at it. Okay. It's fine. Good. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahavidyan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. All right. Good. Welcome to you all to our continuing study of Bhagavad Gita, and welcome also to all of our students watching online. I want to apologize to our online students. We had a problem with the recording last week. We made the class available, but the video portion wasn't available. We'll be careful not to make those mistakes again. We continue our study. We're at the beginning portion of chapter 15, Purushottama Yoga, Purusha Uttama, the highest, Purusha being. And we'll start, as always, with recitation from the beginning. And as I'm chanting, be sure to read the translation and then repeat after me. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha, Shri Bhagavanu Vacha, Urdhva Mulamadashakam, Urdhva Mulamadashakam, Ashvatham Prahuravyayam, Ashvatham Prahuravyayam, Chandansi Yasya Parnani, Chandansi Yasya Parnani, Yastam Veda Savedavata, Yastam Veda Saved. And a longer meter here. Oops. Adhashchodhvam prasritastasya shaka, Adhashchodhvam prasritastasya shaka, Guna pravridha vishaya pravalaha, Guna pravridha vishaya pravalaha, Adhascha mulanyanu Adhascha mulanyanu santatani, Karmanu sandhini manushya loke, Narupamasyeha tatopalabhyate, Narupamasyeha tatopalabhyate, Nanto na chadir na cha sampratishta, Nanto na chadir na cha sampratishta, Ashvathamenam suvirudhamulam, Ashvathamenam suvirudhamulam, Asanga shastrena dridhena chitva, Asanga shastrena dridhena chitva, Tataf parantat parimargitavyam, Tataf parantat parimargitavyam, Yasmin gata nani vartanti bhuyaha, Yasmin gata nani vartanti bhuyaha, Tameva chadyam purusham prapadye, Tameva chadyam purusham prapadye, Yatah pravrittih prasrita purani, yata pravritti prasrita purani nirmana moha jita sanga dosha nirmana moha jita sanga adhyatma nitya Adhyatma nitya vinivritta kamaha Adhyatma nitya vinivritta kamaha Dvandvar vimukta sukha dukkha sanghar Dvandvar vimukta sukha dukkha sanghar Gacchantya mudhav paramavyayam tata Gacchantya mudhav paramavyayam tata. Very good. We'll resume our discussion on, where am I here? Sorry, verse 3. We finished. We actually didn't quite finish, and we want to resume our discussion there. First of all, you remember the elaborate metaphor, the symbolism of the inverted tree. It's called Ashwatha tree. The Ashwatha is the people tree, the sacred fig tree. And what's significant about that tree, as many of you have seen in India, is it's a tangle of roots and branches. It puts these tap roots down, and the branches go every which way. And that tangle of roots and branches is a good symbolic representation of the tangled complexity of our lives. The roots of the inverted tree are up in the heavens, referring to the origin of this tree of samsara, referring also to the fact that we have been tangled in this complex tree of life for how long? How many prior lifetimes? You get the idea? So that's partially symbolized by the roots up in the heavens, symbolizing the eternality of the roots of that tree. And I mentioned in the last class, you can imagine, I imagine that sometimes a bird or an animal will get inside the tangle of branches and roots and get kind of trapped, stuck, and have some difficulty in finding its way out. I think that pretty aptly describes the condition of human life. The struggle of life, samsara, means that which keeps going on and on. This is the tree of samsara, and the idea is, if it kept going on and on and on, but you enjoyed it all the time, it wouldn't be a problem. But the fact is that life includes many difficulties, many struggles, much suffering, and of course it ends in death. So how to extricate ourselves from that ongoing cycle of life after life in which each life includes suffering, how to reach a condition of perfect peace and contentment. Peace and contentment that's uninterrupted. We all experience moments of peace and contentment, but how to achieve a condition of uninterrupted peace and contentment. And Sri Krishna, at the end of this, after giving the metaphor of the tree of samsara and describing how we are all tangled in the complexity of this worldly life, how to get out, he says in the second half of verse 3, Ashwattham enam ashwattham, this tree of samsara, suvirudha moolam, even though it is well rooted, it can be chitwa, it can be cut. How? Asanga shastrena, by the shastra, the axe of asanga, of detachment, by the dridha, which is strong. By the strong axe of detachment, it can be cut. And we ended the class with a brief discussion of that. That needs, I think, much more discussion. How to get out of the tangle of the complexity of life. The problem is that you can imagine a bird stuck in that tangle, and the bird, in its effort to get out, might actually get more and more entangled. You can imagine how that might happen. And I think that represents what happens in worldly life. And that is, we are all driven to find contentment in life. So that drive we've discussed many times, raga and dvesha. Raga, the compulsion to get what you want. Dvesha, the compulsion to avoid what you don't want. Sorry. And that's all driven by our constant seeking of contentment, which is absolutely natural. Problem is that when our search for contentment is focused on the world, we get ourselves more and more entangled like the bird inside the tree. For example, there are many good examples we could choose from. Here's a good example. You want more contentment. So what do? You have a nice house, but there are nicer houses. So you sell your house and you move into your dream house, whatever that may be. It's wonderful. It has more bathrooms and bedrooms. That's when you know you've got that house. You got more bathrooms and you have bedrooms, and it has all the amenities, and it is just wonderful. Now, you think that action has brought you more contentment. We could argue that it'll bring less contentment, because now, what are your mortgage payments on that house? Problem one. And now you've got 3 times as much house as you had before. That means you have 3 times as much to maintain, right? So you have bought yourself, on one level, yes, a beautiful new home, and that will definitely give you some contentment. But along with that contentment comes further difficulties, further troubles. And I think that's true throughout life. Whatever we go for has, what did they say, 2 sides to every coin? So whatever you achieve in life has a downside. So you get a new job that pays you 30% more, but along with that comes a lot of new headaches. Maybe your paycheck goes up 30%, but your headaches at work go up 50% or something. You get the idea. This is true throughout life. Whatever we gain or achieve for the sake of contentment comes with a flip side. Flip side means further entanglement in the web of worldly life, in that complex tangle of worldly life. How to extricate ourselves? Well, clearly, as long as you continue to seek peace and contentment through worldly efforts, you will only further entangle yourself. Can I say that again? Because this is so central to the teachings of Vedanta. Notice I didn't say seeking contentment in the world is wrong. Let's be very clear. As long as and I have to revise my prior statement. As long as your primary focus, add that please, as long as your primary goal or focus in life is to seek contentment through worldly activities, you are doomed to continue to struggle and suffer being entangled in the tree of life. So notice I said I had to add primary goal, your primary orientation. And here's where Sri Krishna's Asanga Shastra comes in. You have to cut away with the acts of detachment. Cut what away? And I think I didn't explain it very well at the end of the last class, so let me explain that very clearly today. What you specifically have to cut away with that acts of detachment is this compulsion to seek contentment and happiness outside in the world. If you know that no matter how hard you try to find perfect contentment and peace through worldly activities, if you know that, why do you continue? Right? This is where you need that asanga shastra, the acts of detachment. It is detachment means to detach yourself from that compulsion to seek contentment only through worldly activities. That's what has to be cut. And it'll take a dridha, a very strong acts of detachment, because you've been engaged in seeking contentment and peace outside in the world for a long time. It's very habitual. And it's not easy to break that connection. And that connection is broken, this idea of the asanga shastra. Asanga, detachment. Detachment in Vedanta, detachment here, vairagya, to use the formal word, detachment. Here asanga comes, but more properly, vairagya, detachment. And in the teachings of Vedanta, the vairagya that's always taught is viveka-janya vairagya. It is detachment born of proper understanding, proper discernment. When you understand the lack of value of something, you'll stop pursuing it naturally. We all have whatever we find valuable, we hold on to. Whatever we find not so valuable, we let go of, we get rid of. This is the Vedantic perspective on renunciation. The trash in your kitchen, when you take it out and put it in the garbage bin, you do so out of discernment. You discern that this has no value. In fact, it has a negative value if it stays in the house. Recognizing through discernment, you get rid of the garbage. Through discernment, we shift our path through life. Discerning the fact that perfect peace and contentment can never be found through worldly activities, discerning the fact that perfect peace and contentment can indeed be found through spiritual practice, leading you within to discover that so-called inner divinity, the truth of yourself, Satchidananda Atma, that twofold discernment. One half of the discernment is recognizing the impossibility of finding perfect peace and contentment out there. Second part of the discernment is recognizing the fact that perfect peace and contentment can be found within you. That discernment leads to vairagya, dispassion, here asanga. So that asanga shastra, the act of detachment, is dridha, is strong to the extent that your discernment is strong. You all get it to an extent. In fact, if you didn't get that to an extent, you wouldn't be sitting here for class today. There's so many other things that you could be doing. So you do get it, but here Sri Krishna says dridha. It has to be really, really strong. And in fact, in the next verses, he's going to talk about how, kind of metaphorically, how you can sharpen the axe of detachment, how you can be more effective in freeing yourself from the tangle of worldly life. So to summarize all that, and then we'll go on in our verse into the next verse. So to get out of that tangle of the complexity of worldly life, that twofold discernment. One part is understanding the impossibility of finding perfect peace and contentment out there. Second part is recognizing the possibility of finding that perfect peace and contentment within. This discernment automatically leads to that detachment. Viveka Janya Vairagya. Vairagya, detachment, born of this particular discernment. That is the Asanga Shastra that can free you from this tangle of worldly life. Then what? And that's what he discusses, Sri Krishna, in the next verse. Then and just one more part of the introduction here. What we're discussing is a major, it is a shift of worldview. It is a complete reversal. Understand clearly. Initially, you thought that all you had to do, and certainly this is true of me, I thought all I had to do was work hard enough and I could have a perfect life. And that turned around 180 degrees, as we say. And I realized that no way, no matter how hard I work, I won't find perfect peace and contentment. This is a complete reversal in our thinking. It is revolutionary, so to speak, in terms of our thought processes. So it's like if you're going in one direction and you realize, oh, I'm going in the wrong direction. In fact, that happened to me. Just as a heavy topic, allow me to tell you a nice story to illustrate that. Years ago, when I was living at Arsha Vidya Gurukulam, I had I had a Thursday night class at East Stroudsburg University. So I'm driving to go to class, and East Stroudsburg University was north from our ashram, but I'm driving south. Because on Tuesday nights, I have a class at the Bethlehem Public Library, which is south. So I'm driving, and I think, well, why isn't the exit coming yet for Stroudsburg? And I'm driving, and it won't come. And finally, I realized I'm going in the wrong direction. So turn around literally 180 degrees. Instead of driving south, I had to drive north. That's the kind of reorientation towards life we're discussing here. When Sri Krishna talks about using that Asanga Shastra, he's talking about this radical reversal in your thinking. So that instead of having your primary focus, again, it's not that you run away from the world, but it's a shift of primary focus. Previously, your primary focus was extrovert, on gaining worldly contentment. After this radical reversal, you have changed 180 degrees. You are now seeking that perfect contentment within. So after you have, with that Asanga Shastra, you metaphorically turn your life around 180 degrees. Then Sri Krishna discusses what comes next. Tataf paran tat parimargitavyam. Tataf paran tat parimargitavyam. Yasmin gata nani vartanti bhuyaha. Yasmin gata nani vartanti bhuyaha. Tameva chadyam purusham prapadye. Tameva chadyam purusham prapadye. Yatah pravrittih prasrita purani. Yatah pravrittih prasrita purani. Tataha, and then, thereafter, then what? Padam, tat, parimargitavyam. Tat, padam, that state, parimargitavyam, should be sought. What kind of state? The state yasmin, in which, yasmin gata, the state having reached which, nani vartanti bhuyaha, no one again returns. The state having reached which there is no return. This is clearly a reference to what we call videha mukti, liberation from the cycle of life after life after life. Remember, it describes moksha. And we understand moksha in a twofold way. Moksha means freedom. In particular, it means freedom from suffering. It means freedom from suffering here and now in this life. It also means freedom from suffering after this life comes to an end, which precludes the possibility of being born again. If you're born again, you will be subject to suffering. The only way to avoid future suffering is not to be born again. So that's what Sri Krishna refers to, yasmin, that condition, the condition called moksha. Yasmin gata nani vartanti bhuyaha, that condition in which you are not born again, moksha, liberation, freedom from suffering includes freedom from suffering now. When that bird is trapped in the tree, suffering continues. So we have used that acts of detachment to break ourselves out of the tangle of worldly life. You have turned your attention around 180 degrees so that instead of primarily looking outside in the world, it says tat padam, that state, parimargitavyam, you should seek. Where should you seek? Right? Clearly, within. All right. So, and that's what he says in the second half. You should seek that perfect peace and contentment. Parimargitavyam means to be sought. You should seek tatparam, that state. You should seek it within, we understand. And Sri Krishna explains the attitude, the perspective of the attitude with which you seek. Tameva cha adyam purusham prapadye. Prapadye is a first-person verb. I seek refuge. Or simply, I seek. It can be, I seek refuge, but I think here it's more meaningful if we leave that word refuge out and simply say, I seek. What do I seek? I seek, prapadye, I seek adyam purusham. You have to break those words, cha adyam. I seek adyam purusham, the foremost being. What is the title of this chapter? Purusha Uttamam. So I seek that being, tam, I seek that very, tameva, I seek that very being, yataha, from whom pravrittihi, literally action, refers to nature, and by extension it refers to that whole tree of samsara, engagement in worldly life. So that being trapped in that tangle of roots and branches, pravritti, engagement in a world of seeking contentment and peace outside in the world. So I seek refuge in him, yataha, from whom this seeking prasrata began, purani, long ago. I seek the one from, I seek that adyam purusham, I seek that divine being, that foremost being, from whom all of this started long ago. Remember, the roots of the trees were up, and up in the heavens, referring to the divine source of the universe, everything coming forth from Ishvara. And that's what it's saying here. I seek the source. Being tangled in a tree, I want to come out of the tree and seek the source of the tree. I want to transcend the tree. Now, I'm mixing the metaphor very intentionally here. So that tree represents the complexity of life. So metaphorically, you want to come out of the tangle of life and seek the source, which means you want to stop looking for perfect peace and contentment outside in the world and seek the true source of contentment and peace within. That Adyam Purusham, that foremost divinity, where will you find that foremost divinity? This is one of the most significant differences, perhaps, between the Hindu tradition and other traditions. Other traditions, suppose you seek God. Where will you seek God? Well, it depends on your tradition, but generally, God is out there. God is the heavenly being. God is out there. Even in many Hindu traditions, Lord Shiva is on top of Mount Kailasa. Lord Vishnu at the bottom of the Milky Ocean. But here, the Vedantic approach is quite different. Where to seek God? If we want to use the word God, where to seek God? That's why, again and again and again, we refer to your true nature as the inner divinity. God is present within you. God is Ishvara, let me use the proper word. Ishvara is everywhere, but you won't seek Ishvara, you won't find Ishvara looking outside. Pardon me for a sarcastic joke. You won't find Ishvara in a movie theater. You won't find Ishvara in a mall. You won't find Ishvara in a church, a masjid, or a temple. Honestly, you won't find Ishvara even in a temple. You find a deity which is meant to lead your mind to Ishvara. But that Ishvara pervades the cosmos. You can't say that Ishvara is stuck on the altar. Where will you truly discover that Ishvara? Obviously, within yourself. And the purpose of the deity on the altar, by the way, is to lead you through bhakti, through prayer and devotion. It's to lead you on a journey of discovery, which culminates in discovering that inner divinity. So in the second half of this verse, Sri Krishna describes he says, Tatparam parimargitavyam, you are to seek the source of that tree of samsara, which means you are to seek Ishvara. Second half, where will you seek Ishvara? Ultimately, you seek Ishvara within yourself. Let's continue. Nirmana mohajata sangadosha, nirmana mohajata sangadosha, adhyatma nitya vinivritta kama, adhyatma nitya vinivritta kama, dvandvar vimukta sukha dukkha sanghar, dvandvar vimukta sukha dukkha sanghar, gacchantya mudha paramavyayantat, gacchantya mudha paramavyayantat. So, you are to seek that Ishvara within you, seek your true self. How? And there's some irony here. Let's see the irony before we go into the verse. Look at the irony. To seek yourself. Oh, I haven't told this anecdote for a long time. It was probably in the 1980s. I'm already studying this and visiting my parents. And I'm reading a book. And the book is by my guru, Swami Tadatmananda, and the title is Who Am I? My mother sees me reading. What are you reading? I say, I'm reading this book. What is it? Who am I? My mother, literally, she said, you don't know who you are? I can tell you who you are. You're my son. It was all, literally, that's what she said. Very simple to her. But you understand, who am I means seeking that true self within. But my mother's statement kind of shows the irony. If it's the truth of who you are, then why don't you know it? And we've had this discussion many times, it's an already existent truth of who you are. It's not that you become that. It's not that you become divine. Your true nature is already divine. That inner divinity is an already existent divinity. Then why isn't it known? Which is why in Advaita Vedanta we say it is as though covered by a veil of ignorance, even though it's immediately present. It is not, you don't recognize your true nature due to ignorance. That leads us now to the next question. Why does that veil of ignorance remain? There's a little more different kind of irony. How many classes on Vedanta and Bhagavad Gita have you attended? Yeah. So here's a second level of irony. So first level of irony is you're seeking what you already are. Is first irony. You're seeking an already existent truth of who you are, an already existent divine reality. Irony one. Irony, so then we understand it's covered by a veil of ignorance. Here comes irony two. And that is, you've been studying Bhagavad Gita and other Vedantic teachings for years, most of you, and to some extent, that veil of ignorance remains, right? This is the second kind of irony. In spite of these powerful, powerful teachings, that veil of ignorance is pretty tenacious. It's pretty thick, so to speak, as a veil. And it's not easily removed, and that is a fact. It's not easily removed. Why is it not easily removed? Here's the second problem. Actually, that's the second irony, is that these powerful teachings have failed to remove that veil of ignorance. Why? Any defect in these teachings? I don't think so. These teachings are powerful, and I think you've been exposed, both here and elsewhere, you've been exposed to very, very clear, powerful use of these teachings. So there's no defect in your access to these powerful teachings, which are meant to remove that veil of ignorance. Then we have to ask, what then is the problem? What is the impediment in removing that veil of ignorance? This brings us back to a topic we haven't discussed for a while, and we say that in order for these teachings to work, you have to be a prepared student. We use the word, in Vedanta, we use the word adhikari, not to refer to someone who's in charge, that's the Hindi meaning. In Advaita Vedanta, adhikari means a qualified student. If you lack certain fundamental kinds of preparation, if you are unprepared, these teachings do not work. Which is why there's a tremendous amount of emphasis in the Bhagavad Gita and elsewhere, there's a tremendous amount of emphasis on preparation, because without the preparation, these teachings lose their power. So that's what Sri Krishna gives us in this verse. Prior verses, how to reach that goal. You look within, but now how to remove the impediment in the form of lack of preparation, lack of adhikaritvam. And that's what Sri Krishna tells us here. Crucial. He says, for the sake of that adhikaritvam, you have to be nirmana mohaha. And it's all in plural. Who can reach that goal within? Sri Krishna says, who is capable of reaching? In fact, look at the last line. Gachanti amudhaha param avyayam tata. Amudhaha, those who are free from delusion, those who have managed to remove that veil of ignorance. Amudhaha. Those people, gachanti, they reach tat param avyayam, that eternal state. Those who are freed from ignorance, those who have gained preparation, and with the help of these teachings have turned their attention within to discover that inner divinity, those are the ones who can reach that inner divinity. And then he describes who they are. Those who are amudhaha, freed from ignorance. They're freed from ignorance how? Because they got prepared. What is the nature of that preparation? They are said to be nirmana mohaha. They are free from moha. In this context, kind of, what is the word I'm looking for? Compulsion, compulsivity, literally delusion, but free from we talked about that compulsion to seek happiness outside in the world. So they are free from that compulsivity of moha, or just very simply from concluding moha, ignorance. They're free from the wrong thinking that that if I work hard enough in life, I can find perfect peace and contentment. That ignorance here is moha. They're free from moha, and they're free from mana, pride. Pride is when you tell someone you're doing it wrong. By the way, this usually works with males, not females. If you tell a female, oh, you're doing it wrong, they say, oh, tell me how to do it. You tell a male you're doing it wrong, no, I'm not. Isn't that so typical? That's mana. That's pride. And it's a huge obstacle, let's admit it. So that certainly applies in spiritual life. Okay. So you've already been told you're doing it wrong. If you think you can find perfect peace and contentment through worldly efforts, you're doing it wrong. You get that. So these people, those who can find that true self within, that inner divinity, they're also described by Sri Krishna as Jitta Sangha Doshaha. They are Jitta Doshaha. They have freed themselves. They have overcome Jitta. They have overcome the dosha, the defect of Sangha, attachment. And here comes our raga dvesha again, that compulsion to keep seeking outside. Again, how do you overcome that compulsion? Not by sheer willpower. We said viveka janya vairagya. You overcome that compulsion by discernment, recognizing that perfect peace and contentment cannot be found through that worldly efforts. Such people who are prepared to discover Satchidananda Atma, their true self, are also described by Sri Krishna as being adhyatma nityaha. They are nityaha. their primary focus, their continual focus is adhyatma, within. Adhyatma, towards one's true self. They're continually focused, their primary focus in life. This is again that 180-degree reversal. Instead of your primary focus being outside, your primary focus is to look for that perfect peace and contentment within. Those people are described as adhyatma nityaha. They are continually directing their attention within. They are also described as vinivritta kamaha. They have vinivritta. They have turned away from worldly desires, recognizing the impossibility of gaining perfect peace and contentment through those worldly activities. They are also dvandvaihi vimuktaha. They are vimuktaha, freed from dvandvai, from pairs. What kind of pairs? Pairs like sukha and dukkha. Sangyahi, things that are named sukha and dukkha. That means this compulsion to get what you want, this compulsion to run away from what you don't want. Well, life is full of both. And if the activities of our lives are completely determined by external events, I need to make this point a little bit more clear. My guru used to speak of inner freedom. And what he meant by that term, inner freedom, is not being compelled by raga and dvesha. To be compelled by raga dvesha means you have no, it's almost like you have no free will, almost like you have no free will. What that means is you see something you want, get it. There's some nice sweets on the table, and you know your doctor tells you you're eating too many sweets, but you see it, you want it, you eat it. Where's your free will? That's compulsivity. That's raga. Or you see something you don't want, you run away from it. That's compulsive. There are plenty of things that we don't enjoy, and we have to do it. If our dvesha compels us to avoid unpleasant tasks in life, what kind of life will we lead? So my guru described this as inner freedom. Freedom from that compulsivity of raga and dvesha, and that's what Sri Krishna describes here. Being vimuktaha, freed from these pairs. Ultimately, the pairs are raga and dvesha. Those people are amudhaha. They are freed from, they manage to remove that veil of ignorance with the help of these teachings, with the help of meditation, with the help of all forms of sadhana. They manage to remove that veil of ignorance, and gachanti, they reach tat param avyayam, that eternal state, referring to finding that divinity within. Now, we're discussing this process of gaining adhikaritvam, gaining preparedness. And we had this discussion in a major way back in chapter 13, if any of you remember, where we began the verses amanitvam adambhitvam ahimsa kshantirarjavam. So at the beginning towards the beginning of chapter 13, we had that list of 20 values. Do you remember that? And we said there were 20 values that are essential to prepare you for making these teachings work. And I want to bring you back to a metaphor I used then. And I'd like to share that metaphor again with you today, because I think it's really, really crucial. Because irony, the second irony we discussed. And the second irony is the fact that you've been attending classes like this for a long time, and you might be wondering, when in the world is that veil of ignorance going to go away? What is the problem? And the metaphor is to encourage you to have patience and continue to focus on sadhana. We already mentioned this 180-degree reversal. This reversal in which previously your primary focus in life was extrovert. Now your primary focus in life becomes towards that inner divinity. Then, having made that, by the way, until and unless that reversal takes place, nothing much happens. Nothing much changes, honestly. As long as your primary focus, when I say primary focus in life, I mean when you continue to strive for contentment and peace only through worldly means. As long as that continues, it'll just continue, and that's a treadmill. That's the, what do they call it? The hamster on the wheel? It just goes on and on and on. As the word samsara indicates, that which goes on and on and on. So how to get off that treadmill, that 180-degree reversal. Step 1. Step 2, adhikaritvam, meaning to continue to be engaged in all forms of spiritual practice, all of which cumulatively help you gain the necessary preparedness. So what helps you gain the necessary preparedness? I would say, in fact, many traditional teachers say that the most important spiritual practice is satsanga. Now, satsanga is a term we often take very lightly. But what we're doing right now, satsanga is often used to refer to simple question-answer sessions. But really speaking, what we're doing right now is satsanga. Satsanga means association with spiritually minded people. That's literally what it means. What are we doing right now? Is satsanga. This is such a crucial practice. Even though you come to class again and again and that veil of ignorance remains, this is the kind of spiritual practice that prepares you to remove that veil of ignorance, along with any form of prayer, worship, meditation, as we did earlier this morning, and further, karma yoga, which is not our discussion here at all, but karma yoga means taking your spiritual practice with you when you walk out these doors, so that your spiritual practice continues when you're driving home, your spiritual practice continues at home, your spiritual practice continues when you go to work. When all of these kinds of sadhana, spiritual practice, when you are engaged in all of these forms of sadhana, the cumulative effect of all that sadhana is the degree of preparation necessary to remove that veil of ignorance. When the preparation is complete, it is so easy to remove that veil of ignorance. And now that metaphor I gave way back in chapter 13, the metaphor was lighting a fire when all you have is wet wood. Remember that? Some of you remember that? So you have a pile of wet twigs. The wetness of the twigs represents our lack of preparedness. What will you do to light the wet twigs? You strike a match and hold it there. Striking the match, the light of wisdom coming to class. All right? You strike that match to light that pile of wood and hold the match there, it doesn't light. Strike another match, it doesn't light. Strike another match, it still doesn't light. What does that represent? You come to class again and again and again, and still that veil of ignorance remains. But notice, every time you strike that match, the heat from that one little match dries out the wood a little bit, right? Second match dries it out a little bit further. Third match dries it out a little bit further. Fourth, fifth. That each match gradually prepares that pile of wood to be ignited. Each class you attend gradually prepares you. Each time you meditate, and hopefully you're meditating at home every day, every time you engage in any kind of prayer or worship, including going to a temple, any time, and especially to the extent that you can integrate the teachings of karma yoga into your day-to-day life, all of that cumulatively is like a lot of matches. And after all of those matches have been lit, that stack of wood is now completely dry. And when that stack of wood is completely dry, how many more matches will it take? Right? One more match. One more match, and it ignites. You can see now why Sri Krishna put so much emphasis on preparation, which is what this verse is about, which is what that series of 5 verses we saw back in chapter 13, also dealing with this, the necessity for this kind of preparation, which points then to the necessity to continually be engaged in sadhana, in spiritual practice. So the message is one of patience. Just be patient and know that you are going in the right path, that the wetness of the twigs is gradually being dried out. Your lack of preparedness is gradually being removed. When the wood is sufficiently dried, it will ignite. When you are sufficiently prepared, this flame of spiritual wisdom will ignite and, figuratively speaking, burn away that veil of ignorance. Okay. Gacchanti amudhaha. So those who have been fully prepared, then what? Gacchanti. They reach Padamavyayam. By the way, I guess it's kind of an irony. They reach Gacchanti. What do you mean to reach the inner divinity? Where do you have to, the root, this word Gacchanti, they go. Where do you have to go? And honestly, you don't even have to come here. You can come here, you can go anywhere else, but as long as your sadhana continues, that's the point. So let's do it that way. Last observation here. When that wood is completely dry, you don't have to do anything special, just one more match. In the same way, when you're coming here or anywhere else, when you are adequately prepared, that light of wisdom just naturally takes place. It ignites. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do because, as we said earlier, your true nature already is that divinity. That's why the use of the word gacchanti in Sanskrit is a little bit ironic in itself. You are going to yourself. In Sanskrit, they use the term praptasya praptihi, gaining what you already have. Nice expression. You discover who you already are, you gain what you already have. Okay, good place to conclude our class today. A couple of quick announcements. Tomorrow, Sunday, we have our Vedanta class, Upadesha Sahasri. We're beginning a new chapter, so it's a nice time to join us at 10 o'clock. And immediately after, at 11, we have satsang, question answer, so come and join us. Also, I'll remind you again, Vasanti has just resumed her Sanskrit classes. Only one class has taken place so far, and the classes also will be recorded, so you can catch up. So if you missed the first classes and you would like to learn Sanskrit properly, you can still join, go to our website and subscribe for her Sanskrit class. And we'll conclude now with our brief prayers at the altar. Om Gananahan Tva Ganapatigam Avamahe Kaving Gavinam Upamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanasvatana Shranvan Uttavasira Saranam Om Mahaganapataye Namaha Ishvaro Gururhatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramhanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Duhka Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Mahamritangamaya Om Shanti 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 Om Tat Sat.